I was 200 miles away at a sales conference when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. Living room camera. Activity detected. I almost ignored it. It was probably Bailey, our golden retriever, knocking something over again. That was the whole reason I installed the cameras in the first place, to check on him while I travel for work. But something made me open the app. The live feed loaded slowly, as if it understood the weight of what it was about to show me. There was Bailey, tail wagging, sitting obediently near the couch like he always did. Loyal, innocent, unaware. And then I saw her. Rebecca stood in the living room, wearing the robe I had given her for Christmas. She wasn't alone. A man I didn't recognize stood far too close to her. Too familiar. Too comfortable. I checked the time. Tuesday afternoon. Then I remember the message she had sent me that morning. A leak under the kitchen sink. She had called the plumber. He was supposed to be finished by noon, but was well past that. I watched as they talked. I watched her laugh. I watched him rest his hand at her waist in a way that no professional should. Bailey's tail kept wagging, unaware that the foundation of his home was shifting beneath him. And mine was too. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I'm 38 years old. I work as a regional sales manager for a medical supply company based in Charlotte. It sounds impressive at dinner parties, but in reality, it means airports, rental cars, and hotel rooms that all look the same. 2 weeks on the road. 3 days home. Repeat. I had been doing that for 6 years. The money was good. The travel was exhausting. Rebecca always said she understood. "You're building our future," she would tell me. "I can handle things here." We have been married 9 years. High school sweethearts. Married young, full of certainty and optimism. We bought a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. Adopted Bailey, filled the walls with framed vacations and holiday memories. From the outside, we were the kind of couple people assumed would last forever. We had been trying to start a family for 2 years. The doctors said nothing was wrong. It will happen, they assured us. Rebecca blamed stress. I blamed my travel schedule. We kept trying to stay hopeful. The cameras had been my idea after Bailey's separation anxiety led to a few disasters around the house. I ordered a simple 4-camera system online and installed it one Saturday morning. Living room, kitchen, hallway, backyard. It felt responsible, practical. At first, the cameras brought comfort. From a hotel room in Atlanta or Nashville, I would check in and see Bailey asleep on the couch. Sometimes I would watch Rebecca come home from work at the dental office, kneel down to greet him, let him outside. It made the distance feel smaller. I would text her, "Just check the cameras. Bailey looks happy." She would reply, "He's such a good boy. Miss you." It felt normal. Routine. Safe. Until it wasn't. After seeing the living room footage, I switched to the kitchen camera. They were there, closer now, talking in low voices. The plumber's toolbox sat open on the counter, forgotten. Whatever work he had come to do had clearly stopped. I felt something inside me go very still. I didn't storm back into the conference room. I didn't call her. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I kept watching. I moved through each camera feed with shaking fingers. The hallway, the backyard, back to the living room. Time stretched painfully. Eventually, I closed the app. I stood there in the quiet hotel corridor, surrounded by the muffled hum of professional conversations behind closed doors, and realized that my life had just split into 2 halves, before that alert and after it. The rest of the conference passed in a blur. I smiled when required, shook hands, gave my presentation. No one noticed anything different about me. That was the strange part. The world doesn't pause when your heart cracks open. That night in the hotel room, I replayed the footage, over and over, not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because my mind refused to believe what my eyes had seen. I kept searching for an innocent explanation. There wasn't one. The next morning, I checked the cloud storage again. The plumber's truck had been in the driveway far longer than necessary. Hours, not minutes. I contacted the plumbing company listed on the side of the vehicle. The receptionist informed me that the technician assigned to our address had completed the job before noon and had no additional calls scheduled in that area. He had not been dispatched back. My stomach dropped. When I returned home 2 days later, Rebecca greeted me at the door like she always did. She hugged me, asked about the conference. Bailey barked excitedly, running circles around us. For a moment, I almost wished I had never opened that app. but the truth was already living in my chest. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse her. I simply asked one question. How long has he been coming here? The color drained from her face before she even answered. Silence can be more revealing than words. What followed were hours of tears, explanations, fragments of honesty mixed with deflection. She said she had felt lonely, said the distance had grown too wide, said she never meant for it to go this far. I listened. I really did. But every sentence felt like it was arriving too late. In the following days, more truth surfaced. The plumber wasn't just a stranger who crossed a line. He was married as well. When his wife learned what had happened, her world shifted the same way mine had. Two households unraveled because of choices made in quiet afternoons. I moved into the guest room first, then into a short-term rental. Papers were filed. Conversations were had with lawyers instead of late-night whispers across pillows. There's a particular kind of grief that comes from betrayal. It isn't just the loss of a person. It's the loss of the future you had built in your mind, the children you imagined, the holidays, the growing old together. Bailey stayed with me. Sometimes late at night, I think about that moment in the hallway of the conference center. The simple decision to open an app. Technology didn't end my marriage. Distance didn't end it. Even loneliness didn't end it. Choices did. I still travel for work. I still stay in hotel rooms that look the same. But I no longer assume that stability is guaranteed just because everything appears fine on the surface. Trust, I've learned, is quiet and fragile. Once cracked, it doesn't return to its original shape. And sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a single notification on a phone. Bailey was the first thing I saw when I reopened the app. He was sitting by the couch, tail wagging gently, completely unaware. Rebecca stood near the kitchen, speaking to someone just out of view. A moment later, a man stepped into the frame. He looked to be in his 30s, wearing jeans and a navy blue work shirt with a small logo stitched over the pocket. I couldn't read it clearly at first, but I knew who he had to be. The plumber. I checked the timestamp. Late afternoon. She had told me he would be finished by noon. Maybe the repair was more complicated than expected, I told myself. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. I watched a few seconds longer. He said something. She laughed. It looked casual, normal. I closed the app and returned to the conference session, but the image stayed with me. It pressed against the back of my thoughts, distracting me from every slide and every speaker. An hour later, I was back in my hotel room. The meetings had ended early, and I had nothing but quiet time and a growing sense of unease. I opened the app again. The living room feed was still active. He was still there. I checked the time again. He had been at the house for hours. I switched to the kitchen camera. Empty. The hallway camera. Empty. Back to the living room. Rebecca was sitting on the couch now. The plumber was sitting beside her, not across from her, not standing at a professional distance, but beside her. Close. Bailey lay on the floor, chewing one of his toys, content and trusting. I watched their body language carefully. The cameras didn't record sound, but they didn't need to. She leaned toward him. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. He spoke. She touched his arm lightly. My stomach tightened. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was friendly. Maybe they were discussing the repair. Maybe I was letting my imagination run wild. Then he leaned closer, and she didn't move away. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, phone trembling in my hand, watching my wife grow comfortable with a stranger in our home. I should have called her. I should have interrupted. I should have done something. Instead, I stayed silent. He stood up. She stood up. Together, they walked toward the hallway and disappeared from the living room camera. My pulse quickened. I switched to the hallway feed. A few seconds later, they appeared, walking down the hall toward the bedroom. Our bedroom. The camera didn't cover that room. I had never thought it would need to. I stared at the now empty hallway screen. Maybe there was another leak, I told myself. Maybe they were checking something in the bathroom. Maybe there was a logical explanation. But deep down I knew. I switched back to the living room camera. Bailey was alone again, lying on the floor, tail thumping softly against the rug. I waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. When they finally reappeared in the hallway and then stepped back into the living room, something inside me shifted permanently. Rebecca adjusted her robe. The plumber looked relaxed, satisfied, as though he had completed more than just a household repair. She walked him to the front door. He said something that made her laugh. He stepped outside. She closed the door gently, leaned against it for a moment, and smiled to herself. Smiled, and she walked out of frame. I sat there in the quiet hotel room, staring at the empty living room on my screen. Bailey had climbed onto the couch, curling up as if nothing in his world had changed. In mine, everything had. I expected anger to explode inside me. I expected tears. Instead, I felt nothing. A strange, hollow stillness. Like someone had unplugged my emotions all at once. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. The plumber fixed a leak. $280. Can you send it to me? I stared at the message for a long time. My hands felt cold. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the cloud storage attached to the camera system and began downloading everything. Every angle. Every timestamp. The entire afternoon. I saved the files to my phone, backed them up online, emailed copies to myself. If my life was about to fall apart, I needed the truth preserved. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the darkness of the hotel room, replaying the footage in my mind over and over. Part of me wanted to call her immediately, to demand answers, to let the pain spill out. But another part of me, the part trained by years in sales and negotiation, understood something important. Emotion clouds judgment. Facts clarify it. I needed clarity. Who was this man? Was this the first time? Or had I just discovered something that had been happening for months? I opened my laptop and started searching. In one of the frames, I had managed to capture a partial image of the logo on his shirt. I zoomed in until the letters sharpened just enough to read. Dalton Plumbing and Heating. A local company. I found their website easily. Family-owned business. Professional design. Smiling team photos. I scrolled through the staff page until I found him. Travis Dalton. Owner-operator. Married. 2 children. There he was, smiling confidently in his profile photo. On the About Us page, there was a picture of him standing with his wife and kids in front of their truck. Everyone looked happy, proud. I stared at his face for a long time. This was the man who had walked through my front door. The man who had stayed for hours. The man who had crossed a line in my home. I saved the company's contact number. Then I searched his name on social media. His profile was public. Photos of family vacations. Birthday parties. A recent post that read, "Grateful for my beautiful family and everything we've built." The irony made my chest tighten. 2 households. 2 marriages. For children who had no idea how fragile their world really was. I closed my laptop and sat in silence. The betrayal hurt, but what hurt more was the realization that I had been the last to know. While I was working, traveling, trying to provide, life at home had shifted in ways I never imagined. By morning, my shock had hardened into something steady and controlled. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to react without thinking. When I returned home, I would look Rebecca in the eyes and ask for the truth. And this time, I would already have it. The hardest part wasn't what I saw on the cameras. It was understanding that the life I believed in, the marriage, the trust, the shared future, had quietly changed without my consent. And now I had to decide what to do with that knowledge. On his social media page, he had written, "Blessed beyond measure." I almost laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny, but because it felt like a cruel joke. The next morning, I didn't attend the conference sessions. I found a quiet corner inside a Starbucks, ordered coffee I barely touched, and opened my laptop. If I was going to face this, I needed to understand how deep it went. I began building a timeline. I reviewed every camera alert from the past 3 months, every motion notification, every saved clip. Most of it was harmless. Bailey pacing around the house, Rebecca leaving for work, returning in the evening, the usual rhythm of daily life. But patterns began to emerge. Tuesday afternoons. Always Tuesday afternoons. I cross-referenced those dates with my travel schedule. Each time I had been out of town, there was unusual activity between 2 and 6 in the afternoon. Sometimes it lasted an hour. Other times it stretched much longer. I replayed the saved footage from those days. The angles weren't always clear, but there were enough details to tell a story. A man's jacket draped over a chair that didn't belong to me. 2 wine glasses sitting on a coffee table when we rarely drank on weeknights. Rebecca laughing at someone just out of frame. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a single mistake. It had been happening for months. I called my boss and told him I had a family emergency. He didn't press for details. "Take care of what you need to, Ryan," he said. I checked out of the hotel, loaded my car, and started the 3-hour drive back to Charlotte. I didn't call Rebecca. I didn't text her. I just drove, the road blurring beneath me as my mind worked through what I would say. When I arrived mid-afternoon the next day, her car was already in the driveway. She was home early. Her shift usually didn't end until later. I parked a few houses away and opened the camera app again. The living room was empty. The kitchen was quiet. The hallway still. In the backyard, Bailey lay in the sun, peaceful as ever. I waited. A few minutes later, Rebecca walked into the living room, phone in her hand. She was smiling at something on the screen. She typed a message, waited, smiled again. Then she walked down the hallway toward the bedroom. I gave it 10 minutes. Then I stepped out of the car, walked up to the front door, and unlocked it as quietly as I could. Bailey heard me first. He came running down the hallway, tail wagging wildly, thrilled to see me. I knelt and rubbed behind his ears. "Good boy," I whispered. "Quiet." He sat obediently, panting happily, unaware of the tension in the air. I walked toward the bedroom. The door was half open. I could hear her voice, soft and affectionate. "I know. I miss you too," she said gently. "He's gone until Friday. We have time. Tomorrow? Same time." A pause. A small laugh. "Okay. I'll see you then." I pushed the door open. Rebecca was lying on the bed, phone still in her hand, smiling at the screen. When she looked up and saw me standing there, the smile disappeared instantly. "Ryan," her voice shook. "You're not supposed to be home until Friday." "I know," I said calmly. "Surprise." She sat up quickly, panic rising in her expression. "I was just talking to Travis," I finished for her. The color drained from her face. I took out my phone and opened the camera app. I turned the screen toward her. "I installed cameras for Bailey," I said quietly. "Remember?" Her eyes widened as I played the footage from Tuesday. The living room, the couch, the hallway, the two of them walking out of frame. She watched in silence, frozen. When the video ended, I lowered the phone. "How long?" I asked. She didn't answer. "How long, Rebecca?" Her voice was barely audible. 3 months. 3 months. Every Tuesday? I asked. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for what?" I asked evenly. "Didn't mean to betray me? Or didn't mean to get caught?" She flinched. I sat on the edge of the bed, leaving space between us. I felt tired more than angry. "I've been traveling for 6 years," I said softly. "I've missed birthdays, anniversaries, quiet evenings at home. I've slept in hotels and eaten alone in restaurants so we could build something stable. And all this time," she covered her face and cried. "I was lonely," she said through tears. "You're never here." I felt invisible. "So you chose someone else to see you?" I replied. She didn't argue. After a long silence, I stood up. "I'm staying somewhere else tonight," I said. "Tomorrow I'm calling a lawyer. You should do the same." "Ryan, please," she whispered. But something inside me had already shifted beyond repair. "I'm done," I said gently, and I meant it. I walked out of the room. Bailey followed me to the door, confused but loyal. I knelt and held his face in my hands. "You're a good boy," I told him. "I'll come back for you soon." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. I didn't go to a hotel. Instead, I drove to a quiet bar on the edge of town. I sat alone in a corner booth and ordered a drink I barely tasted. I took out my phone. Travis Dalton's number was still saved in my contacts. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. "Dalton Plumbing." A woman's voice said warmly, "This is Jenny." For a moment, I considered hanging up. I imagined the life on the other end of that line. Children doing homework, dinner cooking, a normal evening untouched by the truth. But she deserved to know. "Hi, Jenny," I said carefully. "My name is Ryan Mitchell." There was a brief pause. "I'm calling because I believe your husband has been spending time at my house when he wasn't scheduled to be working." Silence filled the line. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tightening. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. I have video footage, I said quietly, and I think you deserve to see it. Another long silence. When she finally spoke again, her voice was no longer warm. It was trembling. I think we need to talk, she said. Two lives had already fractured. Now the truth was about to reach a second home, and nothing would ever be the same again. With my wife, there was silence on the other end of the phone. I have video evidence, I continued carefully. Timestamps. Recordings. I thought you should know. Her voice trembled. Who is this? My name is Ryan. I'm not calling to hurt you. I just believe you deserve the truth. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, she said, send me the video. I sent it. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was her. Is this real? She whispered. Yes, I answered. I could hear her trying to hold herself together. Then the sound of her crying broke through the line. I had no idea, she said. He's been working late, especially on Tuesdays. He said business was picking up. I'm sorry, I told her. And I meant it. She hadn't done anything to deserve this any more than I had. We talked for nearly 20 minutes. She told me about their children, about school drop-offs, family dinners, plans they had made for the future. She told me how proud she had been of the business they built together, how she trusted him. When we ended the call, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not revenge, relief. For the first time since that motion alert buzzed on my phone, I didn't feel alone in the truth. The next morning, I met with a lawyer named Angela. She was in her mid-50s, sharp-eyed, direct, and calm in a way that made me feel steadier just sitting across from her. I showed her everything, the footage, the timeline I had built, the text messages I had recovered from the cloud backup. She watched without expression. When I finished, she folded her hands and leaned back. This is clear, she said. In North Carolina, fault-based divorce is recognized. Adultery is grounds. What does that mean for me? I asked. It means you have leverage. She would not be entitled to alimony. Depending on how this proceeds, you may also recover legal fees. I nodded slowly. I didn't want revenge. I wanted resolution. I want this done quickly and cleanly, I said. Then we begin immediately, she replied. Rebecca tried calling me 17 times that day. I watched the notifications appear and disappear. She sent messages filled with apologies. She said she had made a terrible mistake. She said she loved me. She asked me not to throw everything away. I responded once. My lawyer will contact you. Please do not reach out to me directly. Then I blocked her number. Meanwhile, Travis's life began unraveling just as quickly. His wife confronted him the same day she saw the footage. By the end of the week, she had filed for divorce. Word spread quickly in their community. Clients began pulling back. Trust, once broken, travels faster than reputation. I didn't celebrate his downfall. I simply accepted it as consequence. The divorce process lasted 4 months. Rebecca's attorney attempted to argue that the cameras were an invasion of privacy, that I had been spying on her. Angela calmly dismantled that argument. The cameras were installed with Rebecca's knowledge in shared areas of the home for a legitimate purpose. There was no legal expectation of privacy in those spaces. Another attempt was made to suggest that my travel schedule had emotionally strained the marriage. Angela presented the timeline, the repeated pattern, the planning involved. The judge listened carefully. In the end, the ruling was straightforward. Rebecca kept her car and personal belongings. I kept the house. I kept my financial stability. And I kept Bailey. The day the divorce was finalized, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet, like closing a heavy book you never wanted to finish. 6 months later, I accepted a new position in the same industry. Better pay, no travel, no more airports and hotel corridors. I sold the house and bought something smaller, a modest place with 1 bedroom for me, 1 for a home office, and a fenced backyard where Bailey could run freely. The silence in that house was different. It wasn't heavy. It was honest. I didn't rush into dating. I didn't try to replace what had been lost. I focused on rebuilding myself. Routine, work, long walks with Bailey in the evenings. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in quiet increments. About a year after everything ended, I saw Rebecca by accident at a coffee shop. She was sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing. She looked happy. For a brief moment, I searched my chest for anger or regret. There was none, just a distant understanding that we were no longer part of each other's story. I finished my coffee and walked out. Bailey was waiting in the car, tail thumping against the seat the moment he saw me. "Come on, buddy," I said softly. "Let's go home." And we did. Sometimes people ask if I regret installing those cameras. I don't. Not because I'm glad I discovered the betrayal, but because I'm grateful for the clarity. You cannot repair what you refuse to see, and you cannot build a future on a foundation that is already cracked. The cameras didn't destroy my marriage. They revealed its condition. Truth can be painful. It can dismantle everything you thought was secure. But it also gives you something powerful, the chance to rebuild honestly. If you've ever faced a moment where comfort would have been easier than truth, you understand. Sometimes the worst thing you can discover becomes the very thing that sets you free. And in the end, when everything else fell apart, the only one who stayed loyally by my side was a golden retriever who never needed a camera to prove his faithfulness.